Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a whole stack of recent political reporting, analyses, our own research too, and we really try to pull out the key insights for you.
Yeah, make sense of it all.
Exactly. Our mission today, cut through that noise, make sense of all these different, sometimes contradictory stories. We want you to feel genuinely informed without getting totally swamped. Basically, a shortcut to clarity. Okay. Let's dive in.
It's a good goal because, look, the political landscape right now, it can feel like such a tangle.
Right.
But what's really compelling, I think, is seeing how things that seem separate, disparate events, they're often not isolated at all. They're like interconnected threads.
Revealing bigger patterns.
Exactly. Broader patterns. We're going to look at how everything from sensitive files to economic bills, even power struggles between government branches, it's all playing out at the same time.
Absolutely. And let's kick things off with a really prime example of how information, or maybe even the lack of information, gets used strategically.
Weaponized, almost.
Yeah, weaponized. We're talking about wedge issues, right?
Yeah.
Those topics that are super divisive, designed to split your opponent's supporters, sow some discord. And right now, the Epstein Files, well, they've become this huge media thing, especially this summer.
A very hot topic.
Very. Ankush Kardori, he's a former federal prosecutor, now writes for Politico magazine. He lays out three, let's say, plausible scenarios for why these files are hitting such a nerve, especially with people close to former President Trump.
It's a sharp analysis, really gets into the political thinking behind it all.
So, Kardori's first scenario, he calls it the double exploit.
Yeah.
This suggests Trump and others, they maybe knew all along there weren't any scandalous files involving them.
Right.
But they just exploited the whole Epstein tragedy anyway. For political gain, maybe financial gain too.
Right.
Feeding that red meat to the base, hinting at corruption that wasn't really there.
Portrayed as deeply cynical, if true.
Definitely. Okay, scenario 2. Trump was a client. This idea suggests, well, maybe a DOJ investigation found some references linking Trump to Epstein, and it ties into claims by Michael Wolff about tape interviews with Epstein, raising the possibility that Trump, maybe people like Pam Bondi too, are desperately trying to cover something up.
A potential cover-up, yeah. That's the core of that one.
And then the third scenario, Kardori offers.
Yeah.
He calls it, they drank the Kool-Aid.
Okay.
This one suggests Trump and his allies, they actually genuinely believed the rumors. They thought this client list was real, wanted to use it against Democrats.
Ah, so they thought they had something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now, Kardori suggests they're maybe dumbfounded because their own digging found nothing. No list. Epstein didn't blackmail anyone. And so now they're kind of stuck, right? They're trying to explain to their base why they were pushing this thing that turned out to be, well, not there.
Which is fascinating in itself. And what's really interesting now is how Democrats are just aggressively grabbing this whole narrative,
Oh, yeah.
using it as a potential wedge issue to try and divide Republicans. Their theme is pretty straightforward. Powerful Republican politicians are covering up the misdeeds of other powerful Republican politicians.
Simple, direct.
And for someone leaning towards conspiracy theories, it's an easy explanation to latch onto.
And they are leaning in hard.
Yeah.
Remember Ro Khanna, congressman from California? He introduced that amendment in committee, forced publication of Epstein Files in 30 days.
Right. I remember that.
Every single Democrat voted for it, almost all Republicans against it. That really felt like the starting gun, for this whole what are Republicans hiding campaign.
Yeah, that vote was significant.
And since then, we've seen Senator Gallego in Arizona suggesting Trump's Rosie O'Donnell comment was just a distraction from the Epstein list. Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader, demanding the truth, the whole truth. And Ted Lieu, also from California, being super direct. Where is that client list? What is Attorney General Bondi hiding? This is the case of the powerful protecting the powerful.
That phrase, the powerful protecting the powerful, that resonates.
It really does.
And you're right. The implicit assumption baked into everything the Democrats are saying is that this list exists.
Crucial assumption.
Absolutely. If they can convince even just a part of the Republican base that it's real, well, as one source said, they're halfway home. The DNC is tweeting daily about an alleged cover-up. The House Majority CAC ring, they've put out a list of Republicans they claim are helping or, tolerating it.
They're coordinating the message.
Very much so.
I would think.
Pat Dennis, he's president of American Bridge, the Democratic Opposition Research Group. He sees it as a foot in the door.
A foot in the door to what?
To argue that Trump doesn't have your back on other stuff, too, like healthcare, veterans affairs, even if, the dead sex offender angle has more salience, as he put it.
More immediate impact.
Right. And look, it doesn't help Trump that those photos of him and Epstein keep circulating.
Yeah, those are tough images.
The one with Trump's hand on Epstein's shoulder, the one with Epstein, Trump, Melania, Ghislaine Maxwell, they don't exactly scream strangers, you know?
No, they don't.
The more those images are out there, the harder it is for Trump to distance himself.
It really says something about our current political moment, that this issue could become so dominant.
It really does. And the polling data, it paints an interesting, if slightly confusing picture. There's an internal Democratic poll Politico got hold of. It shows 61% of Trump voters think he's hiding Epstein info.
61%. That's high.
Very high.
Yeah.
Now, a CNN poll put the number at 40%. So there's a discrepancy, could be timing, could be how the question was asked.
Sure.
But clearly the issue strikes a chord with a significant number of Republicans. And the Democratic goal here, it seems, is just to seed some doubt.
Plant that seed.
Yeah, plant the seed. If he lied to us on this, maybe he lied to us on other things too. And Trump's reaction kind of feeds into this, doesn't it? His social media post calling it a Jeffrey Epstein hoax, attacking weaklings, which seems to mean his own supporters demanding the files.
Yeah, attacking his base. Strange move.
It suggests he's worried, maybe doesn't quite know how to put the fire out, as one analysis put it.
And, speaking of questions around transparency and all that,
Yeah.
there's this really interesting little news tidbit. Maureen Comey.
James Comey's daughter.
That's the one. Federal prosecutor at SDNY, Southern District of New York.
Mm-hmm.
Often called one of the most powerful U.S. attorney's offices, right?
Right, very profile.
She worked successfully on both the Epstein and the Ghislaine Maxwell cases. And she was just fired out of the blue yesterday.
Fired? Why?
The stated reason was just citing the broad powers of the president under Article 2 of the Constitution. That's it.
Wow, just presidential power. Given her role in those specific cases, that timing certainly makes you look a bit closer. It raises questions about the nature of that action, for sure.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's transition to another example of how public perception gets shaped, but this time more on the legislative level.
Okay.
This is where you really see the strategic game playing out around major policy. Look at the BBB bill, or technically BBL now. Hugely unpopular.
Deeply unpopular, yeah. Democrats are already planning to make it a central issue for 2026.
So Republicans have a job to do, right? They have to try and sell the public on this thing.
And who did they send out to help sell it? None other than J.D. Vance.
Right. The Yale law grad, former Silicon Valley VC.
Yep. They send him to West Pittston, Pennsylvania, Rust Belt town, actually only about 12 miles from Joe Biden's hometown, Scranton.
Trying to shore up support there for the local Republican Congressman Rob Bresnahan.
Exactly.
And Vance holds this micro rally, as it was described. Small event, pretty focused.
How small?
Only about 250 people turned up for his speech, which is just 15 minutes long.
15 minutes? That's quick.
Yeah. He focused on tax cuts, though, reportedly didn't detail who benefits most. He hit the point about exempting overtime pay from taxes, and he played up the nostalgia card, coal and gas industry, which used to be big there.
Trying to connect on that local level, so how did it land?
Well, reporters from a local paper talked to some folks afterwards. It gives you a glimpse into, the real-world understanding, or maybe misunderstanding.
Yeah, those anecdotes are always revealing.
There was Walter Volinsky, 74, retired, said he hadn't read the 900-page law.
Not surprising.
But he trusted Donald Trump to make the country great again. Then there was Stephen Taylor, 52, truck driver. He liked the tax breaks on tips and overtime, but he was worried. Worried about Medicaid cuts hurting his nephew who's diabetic.
The personal connection.
Exactly. And he said, if that happens, he'd probably blame Trump for hurting his family, not just, other people.
That's such a stark example, isn't it? How that direct personal impact can just override the broad policy talking points.
Totally. And the counterattack, the counter-narrative, it's already going strong. Governor Josh Shapiro, the Democrat in Pennsylvania, he's aggressively targeting state Republicans who voted for the bill like Bresnahan. Shapiro said Bresnahan caved, voted for it even after telling constituents it was a red line for him not to hurt Medicaid or rural hospitals.
So putting the pressure on, what's Bresnahan's response?
His counter is that the bill actually strengthens Medicaid by cracking down on fraud.
Right. The standard waste, fraud, and abuse line. What this really shows, I think, is how the very same piece of legislation gets spun in completely different ways.
Depends who you're talking to.
Totally. Depends on the audience, the political goal. It's less about what the bill actually says, line by line, and more about this kind of choose-your-own-adventure interpretation that's designed to hit home with specific voter groups.
That feels like a good segue into the ongoing tug-of-war between the branches of government, starting with this really immediate deadline on spending cuts.
Yeah, that's happening right now.
Donald Trump ordered his team to claw back $9 billion,
Yeah.
unspent funds for foreign aid, and, interestingly, public media, NPR, and
But
PBS.
$9 billion. By when?
By midnight tomorrow. And it needs House approval. Things got interesting in the Senate during a procedural vote.
How so?
Senators Susan Collins from Maine, Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, they all voted no.
Okay. 3 key Republicans.
Which forced J.D. Vance, as president of the Senate, to come in and cast the tie-breaking vote just to move forward. And even some senators who voted yes on that procedural step, like Tom Tillis from North Carolina, they were voicing skepticism, asking for assurances. So not exactly enthusiastic support, even from some who voted yes.
Right. So what happened on the final vote? Did Collins and Murkowski stick to their guns?
They did. The final vote was 51-48. Collins and Murkowski voted against the actual bill.
Okay.
The Senate also managed to add an amendment, removing $400 million in cuts that were aimed at PEPFAR, the big HIV/AIDS program.
Ah, protecting PEPFAR. That's
Yeah.
significant.
So now the amended bill goes back to the House. But the level of concern among many senators, even some who voted for it, was really striking.
Like what specifically?
Well, McConnell complained the White House hadn't given any details on how they'd implement the cuts, accused them of basically wanting a blank check.
Okay. Process concerns.
Murkowski made a really powerful case for public media, talked about its role broadcasting emergency alerts, used a recent earthquake and tsunami warning in Alaska as a specific example,
Wow.
said point blank that public media save human lives.
Hard to argue with that.
Yeah. And Tillis, he's retiring, so maybe less worried about political fallout.
Right. More freedom to speak his mind.
He was pretty blunt, said he suspected, quote, "We're going to find out there are some things that we're going to regret." Hinted about second and third order effects, maybe future posture, if Trump ends up double-crossing them.
Foreshadowing potential conflict down the line.
And then Senator Roger Wicker from Mississippi. Yeah. He said he had reservation, was troubled by how much deference they were giving the executive branch, warned about a disregard for the constitutional responsibilities of the legislative branch under Article 1, basically saying Congress was just conceding that decision voluntarily to the executive branch.
A fundamental separation of powers argument.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he still voted for it, but said there was a larger imperative.
A larger imperative. That really begs the question, doesn't it? Why would senators vote for something they seem to have such deep fundamental constitutional reservations about? What is that larger imperative that makes them effectively hand over power?
It's a huge question about the balance of power right now. And shifting gears slightly, but staying on this theme of institutional stability, what does all this mean for other key bodies? Like, let's look at the Federal Reserve.
Ah, the Fed.
There was this weird headline yesterday. Trump might fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Or maybe not.
Classic Trump uncertainty. Look, very little of what he does seems based on, careful advanced planning. People talk about 4D chess, but honestly, it often looks more like tic-tac-toe.
Or he loses half the time.
Yeah, exactly. The reporting suggests his motivation here would be to fire Powell, put in someone who'd slash interest rates way down.
Why? To lower the interest payments on all that new debt from the BBB bill.
That seems to be the thinking. Lower the debt service costs on that $3 trillion. But the economic consensus is pretty overwhelming.
What's the consensus?
Super low rates like that, they'll spark major inflation, which, ironically, could lead to Republicans losing big time in 2026, maybe 40 or more seats in the House and control of the Senate.
So potentially self-defeating in the medium term?
But that highlights the short-term thinking, right? He apparently doesn't think 17 months ahead. It's also not clear he can just fire Powell easily.
How so?
The law says the president can only fire the Fed chair for cause, not just because you disagree on policy. Powell could actually take it to court.
Really? Would he?
Maybe. Not for the money, obviously, but sources suggest maybe out of an obligation to prevent Trump from ruining the economy by putting in some unqualified loyalists.
So you have this stark tension again. Political desires crashing against institutional independence.
Exactly. It's a recurring theme.
Okay, let's broaden that again. Loyalty, legacy, political futures. Let's talk about the judiciary. Specifically, Trump's approach to picking judges and how it seems to be evolving.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference people are pointing out.
Remember, Trump v 1.0, Back in his first term, he basically rubber-stamped Supreme Court picks from the Heritage Foundation.
Right. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett.
These were seen as, heavyweight intellectuals.
Yeah.
Very conservative. Yes, impressive resumes on paper, but their primary loyalty was arguably to the conservative legal movement.
A known quantity within that world.
But Trump v. 2.0, the current version.
Yeah.
It seems different. The reporting suggests he doesn't just want loyalty to the conservative movement. He wants loyalty to him, personal loyalty.
Above all else.
Often seemingly above qualifications or anything else. Think about some of the names in the Justice Department now. Former AG Pam Bondi, who was his lawyer during the first impeachment. Deputy AG Todd Blanche, who defended him in his criminal trial. Solicitor General D. John Sauer, his lead lawyer in the immunity case before the Supreme Court.
A pattern of appointing his defense lawyers to top legal positions.
Exactly. And a really prime example of this, this Trump v. 2.0 judicial pick seems to be Emil Bov III. Trump nominated him for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit.
Okay, tell us about Bov.
He's 44, Georgetown Law degree, did some clerkships, spent 9 years as an assistant U.S. attorney down at SDNY.
Prosecution experience.
Yes, but apparently was denied a promotion there. Some former colleagues were quoted, calling him pretty harshly, a prosecutor version of a drunken driver.
Ouch. That's strong criticism.
Yeah. He then went into private practice, helped defend Trump in several cases. Now he's back in DOJ as Principal Associate Deputy AG. But the defining characteristic people point to is total loyalty to Trump above all else.
How is that evidenced?
Well, reports identified him as a key player in that alleged scheme to blackmail New York Mayor Eric Adams.
Okay. So controversial actions linked directly to Trump's interests.
Right. And connecting this to the bigger picture, what worries some observers is the idea that Trump might nominate Bov to the Supreme Court if, say, Justice Thomas or Justice Alito were to retire soon.
To the Supreme Court, based on what?
The argument goes. He's young, only 44, and that perceived total loyalty to Trump might, in Trump's eyes, outweigh his lack of legal gravitas.
So loyalty trumps qualifications for the highest court.
That's the concern. And the thinking is, if he gets confirmed to the Third Circuit now, maybe spends a year as an appeals judge, if a Supreme Court seat opens up in, say, June 2026, some worry that year might be seen as just enough judicial experience to get him Senate confirmation.
It really puts the focus on the integrity of the judiciary, doesn't it? And what the criteria should be for these lifetime appointments.
Absolutely. And his confirmation hearing for that Third Circuit seat back on June 25th, it was apparently very contentious.
How so?
8 former federal prosecutors wrote urging the Judiciary Committee to reject him, called him the worst conceivable nominee.
Row from former colleagues.
And 75 state and federal judges signed a letter calling his record egregious and disqualifying. You had opposition from groups like the Society for the Rule of Law Institute. On the other side, 20 Republican attorneys general supported him.
So a real battle. Has the committee voted?
Not yet. The Senate Judiciary Committee still hasn't taken a vote on his nomination.
Okay, one to watch.
Definitely. Finally, let's bring it back to how all these pressures, these dynamics, affect individual politicians and their careers. Let's look closely at Senator Susan Collins of Maine.
Right. Caught in the middle of a lot of this.
Her dream job, reportedly, was always to chair the Senate Appropriations Committee. Well, she got the job. But now sources say it feels more like a nightmare.
Why a nightmare?
Because Donald Trump and the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, are apparently forcing her into positions that really hurt people in Maine.
Like the clawback bill we just talked about.
That's a key example. She put out a statement saying she votes, according to what I assess to be in the best interests of my constituents and my country. Standard stuff.
Sure.
But sources counter that she's often only really allowed to vote against the party line if her vote isn't absolutely essential to pass something Trump wants.
So only when her vote doesn't matter to the outcome.
That's the suggestion, which puts her in a really tough spot politically back home.
Yeah, very vulnerable. She's up for re-election next year, right?
Next year. She'll be 72. She's the only Republican senator running in a state that Kamala Harris won.
That's a tough map.
And her approval rating isn't great.
Yeah.
One recent poll had 51% of Maine voters disapproving of her job performance. She's reportedly even said things privately like, what's the point if I have to vote against the interests of my constituents all the time?
You can see the frustration there.
After Tom Tillis announced his retirement, she is by far the most vulnerable Republican senator up in 26. And, tens of millions of dollars are going to pour into Maine to try and beat her.
So the Democrats must be targeting her heavily.
Oh, yeah. Some Democrats are apparently just hoping she decides it's not worth it anymore and retires.
What about the Trump factor specifically with Collins?
Well, Trump is reportedly pretty irritated with her generally. He's been quiet about her race so far, but that could change.
How might that play out?
It's tricky. If he just, barks at her from afar, that might actually help her in Maine play into her independent image.
Right, the standing up to Trump angle.
But if he were to endorse a primary challenger against her, get his wealthy friends to fund that challenger, she could potentially lose the Republican primary.
And that primary challenger
would almost certainly lose the general election in relatively blue Maine. So Trump attacking her could cost the Republicans the seat.
A complicated dynamic for him, too, then.
Very. And it's telling that Trump apparently refused her requests for changes on the BBB bill. That's almost unheard of, right? For a president to just order the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee around, especially the chair who controls the purse strings.
But he did it!
Yeah, because with that narrow 3-seat majority, he figured he could afford to ignore Collins, ignore Murkowski, and still get his way.
It really highlights the intense pressure these figures are under.
It does, and it raises this maybe unforeseen possibility that maybe she really does just decide, what's the point? Maybe she chooses to retire come January 3rd, 2027.
A fascinating potential outcome.
So, quite a journey we've taken today. From the strategic use of information or non-information with the Epstein Files, how that's used to shape opinion, divide parties, to that intricate dance around the unpopular BBB bill, how its impact gets spun completely differently for different people.
Yeah, the messaging battles.
We've seen that ongoing tug of war between the White House and Congress over spending, over executive power.
And the deep concerns about institutional independence.
Exactly. The Fed, the judiciary.
Yeah.
Especially with judicial picks seemingly based more on personal loyalty than anything else. It's this incredibly complex web, isn't it? Power, strategy, personal impacts.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you, listening? It means trying to understand that the news you read, the headlines you see, they're often just one piece of a much larger multi-layered game. There are complex motives, potentially far-reaching consequences, hiding behind the day-to-day noise.
And maybe it prompts a vital question for you to think about. Beyond these specific battles, how does this constant pursuit of short-term political goals, these intense expressions of loyalty, how does that shape not just the next election, but the actual long-term fabric of how government works? What does accountability even look like down the road? That's something worth pondering, I think, as you keep following the news.